All right, welcome to the trials and tribulations of trailblazing a new mobile market, my adventure into real money gaming. That is a mouthful. First off, very valid question, why me? Currently, I'm a chief marketing officer at Gamblit Gaming. We're a publisher of casual and arcade-style real money games for mobile and land-based. Super nerd. I graduated high school young at 14, probably going to die alone, totally fine with it. Spent my entire life in the games industry, and I've worked both on the internal side, actually producing games, and also on the publishing side, doing more of the business, the marketing, etc. I've had a bunch of hit mobile games, a lot of big console games, and my probably favorite project would have to be Transformers War for Cybertron at Activision, which was a really fun console project. I'm 0 degrees from Kevin Bacon, and I'll explain that later. When I first started out, I thought that jumping from casual console into real money gaming was going to be really fun, sort of like Scrooge McDuck diving into a pool of cash, just money everywhere. I'd say that in reality, it was a little bit more like taking a trip to Mordor. A little bit surprising, a little bit unexpected, and certainly more difficult than I thought it would be. I think a lot of this goes back to the fact that I'm launching casual and arcade-style games in a space that's dominated by casino and poker and kind of traditional casino games. So let's take a look at what the real money market is like today. In the USA, real money gaming, or RMG as it's often referred to, is legal in Nevada, New Jersey, and Delaware in the US. Okay? What that actually equates to is there's 2 users. Yeah, it's a pretty rough market to say the least. In the UK, however, there's a much bigger market. It's well established. There's a lot of companies. There's a lot of brands. So it's sort of like Smithers and Burns just throwing piles of cash at each other. So currently, what is the UK real money market actually like? The gambling market in total for land-based and online is about 16.5 million people. It's roughly 11 billion pounds of revenue. That's as of 2015. All these numbers are from the UK Gambling Commission. Mobile online, currently casino is about $1 billion. Sports betting is around 1.1 billion. Other is 259 million pounds. You're looking at about 7.6 million active real money players online in 2015. 60% male, 40% female, and as you can see, it's actually a pretty wide age range and age split. Roughly half on iOS, half on Android, and just a few on BlackBerry and Windows and all that. Few phones that people actually still use today, which is surprising. Versus the mobile freemium market, all right, that's about 548 million pounds with about 20 million players currently on freemium in the UK. So already you can see that they've got a lot more users with a lot less money. So overall, the mobile online gambling market is about 4x that of mobile gaming in terms of revenue with much fewer users. So basically, it's sort of like Liz Lemon dancing in a pile of cash. It's definitely a much bigger market overall. So what did we actually do in 2015? We launched 7 unique games into the real money space in the UK. Now, they were all different style of arcade, casual, strategy, trivia, etc. type games, right? Nothing was a traditional casino game. They're all sort of games that are similar to other things that you're playing on your phone, but with gambling implemented and aspects of gambling directly built into the game. So we had a really wide variety of experience with a wide range of user types and demographics throughout the space. So, our expectations, we thought that, all of us coming from the world of freemium mobile games, that we could use all of our knowledge there and instantly be successful in RMG. And everything that we knew, analytics, etc. wise, would apply 100% in the real money market. Yeah, not so much. Was not the case at all. Once we got into real money, we realized that there's a lot of really key differences that made the entire experience and all of the numbers and data that we thought that we would know from the other market not completely valid in real money. So the differences were your conversion from a free trial user into a real money depositing user is a lot harder to find. I'll dig into that a little bit more later, but it's not easy to find those real money players. Frequency and retention metrics. Look, at the end of the day, a real money player is not going to come in and out of your app and play 5 times a day like they might in, say, a Clash of Clans or Candy Crush, right? They're probably going to get paid every other week, and they're going to come in, going to make a deposit, maybe around 100 pounds, probably going to win, lose, kind of gamble that away over an hour, and then they may not show up until their next paycheck. So already your retention metrics are completely different than that of a freemium game. Your average LTV in casual versus RMG is very different. One developer that I've been working with launched a casual game in the freemium space, launched the same game that was gambling enabled in the real money space, and their LTV went from $1 in casual freemium to $100 in real money. So obviously the numbers that you're looking at are very different if you can get the recipe right. So when we started out, we sort of felt like we were taking on a giant sumo wrestler and we're a little kid. This is, a tough market to tackle, especially when you're a new company, especially when you're based in the US. Some of the difficulties that we faced. User acquisition. It's a very crowded market. It's something that I've always fought and sort of seen the cost rising in freemium. And with real money, that was no difference. Really, the biggest change was more expensive. Our average CPI targeting users that were into real money was around $5. So it went drastically up from there. Went lower with incentivized, but incentivized didn't work out so well. Legal restrictions. When you are advertising to a real money player, you can't advertise in all of those normal ways, formats, methods, channels, etc. that you're used to. You have to, of course, target 18 plus in the UK, and of course, if you advertise anything gambling-wise in the US, it's 21 plus. So immediately that locks you out of a ton of ad networks, right? There's only a handful of ad networks that you can actually work with, and it's just more limiting in general. Installs in casual ad channels. So those networks that you can advertise on, you can't always guarantee that you're going to get a user that's interested in real money. Sometimes you're going to get people who just want a casual game experience, think the game looks cool, click and download it, and you're out $5 even though they had no interest in playing a real money game. So one of the things that we've learned is immediately, early on in the advertising, blast at your real money game in the banner ad, in the video, in the trailer, spell it out, subtitle it. We are a real money game. You do not want to get those casual users who have no interest unless you pay for a download that you don't get anything out of. Difficulties and legal requirements of signing up for a real money game. Very, very different than a casual game, right? With a casual game, you download something off iTunes, you jump in, maybe you log in with Facebook. With real money games, you have to go through a sign-up process. We have to get your name, your address, your banking information. We need to know you are who you say you are. We have to make sure you're not a problem gambler. We have to make sure you're over the age of 18. We have to make sure that you're located in the UK, right? So once you go through all these steps and processes, sometimes the user doesn't actually want to sit through that to do real money, especially if they already have a real money account with someone else. They may or may not want to go through that sign-up process with you. There's no App Store featuring, right? So when you switch over into real money, you're immediately switching to the publisher's servers, the publisher's backend, the publisher's money. So no money is being exchanged hands with Apple at that point. So what that means is you're never going to get featured on the App Store. So after learning a lot of this stuff, we sort of felt like we were getting tossed around by E-Honda there, and it was kind of a painful learning experience off the bat. Some of the things that we found. I was surprised coming into this space that Google Play doesn't allow any type of gambling apps, right? They make a very substantial amount of money off of real money advertising through their networks, right? It's a huge source of revenue for them. However, when it comes to their app store, they do not allow real money products on Google Play. So that means you're losing half the market off the bat. That means that if you have, let's say, a social game where you want people to compete with each other or do a turn-based game, well, if they have friends who are on Android, boom, they can't play unless you try to do some kind of tricky side load, which is immediately going to cut out a lot of the market as well. Competitors are tough. They are multi-million-dollar projects, right? We're going up against the Bet88s and William Hills of the world that have a lot of money, are very established, and have a strong chokehold on the market. Luckily, we're doing casual arcade, which no one else is really doing in the space at the moment. So if we were competing with, say, casino titles, I probably wouldn't try to do that at all. A lot of casual users downloaded it, didn't want that real money experience and left. So off the bat, we had a high drop-off rate with a lot of our games. Since then, as I mentioned, we've gotten a lot better with advertising, and that's kind of curved off a lot of the users that were dropping off. So basically, in the day, being a casual style game in real money sort of made us feel like we're doing this awkward like yoga tennis dance that like was kind of cool and people were really interested in, but sometimes weren't really sure if they actually wanted it. I just wanted to put that GIF in a spreadsheet, really. It's kind of awesome. So after each launch, what worked well? We started to feel like we gained power with each launch. We sort of knew how to target users better. We knew how to tackle the market. We sort of felt like we had a bit more of a fighting chance. With each launch, we got more successful with getting users at a cheaper cost, getting them to stay in the app longer and play more. Overall, there's a much higher percentage of whales, right? In a real money market, your entire market is basically whales compared to casuals, very different experience. Overall, you're getting a higher amount of money in on deposits and coin in, right? They're making bigger deposits on average. What that means is you've got more money from less customers. You've got less customers to manage and more money coming in on a frequent basis. There's no competition right now in casual RMG. So I think it's one of those lessons that if you're the first to market with different types of product, there's a lot to be gained by getting more people faster, getting more press, and just getting more acknowledgement because there's not as many people in the space trying to do the same thing. Entry bar is really high. In order to launch any type of real money product, you have to be licensed, regulated, approved. This is often a 6 to 7 figure cost per territory, right? So UK is a territory. In the US, it's per state. So Nevada, New Jersey, California, each of those is a different territory that you have to go through a 6 to 12 month, very expensive process to get licensed. So being a fully licensed company obviously immediately means that another company of 4 people in their garage can't come in and just start competing with you. So overall, social targeting, especially Facebook, worked really well for us. A little bit of a higher CPI, but because we could really find people who were into real money products, we immediately got users that monetized the game much better. We also learned that incentivized installs in this market simply do not work. People will download, boom, they're gone. They do not retain at all. Bonus matching resulted in about 3 times more signups overall. For the first couple months, we didn't have bonus matching. As soon as we implemented it, we saw an immediate increase in the number of people that would sign up and do a real money deposit. So what were the lessons that we learned? Trailblazing takes time. This doesn't happen overnight. I think from the last year of experience, we've learned a lot as a company from launching 7 different titles. It's expensive. This is not a cheap proposition. This isn't something you can go in with a few $100K and get the experience that you need. It takes time to really learn this market and trailblaze. Freemium rules do not apply here. This is definitely a different market. It's a different customer, and it's just different metrics in general. Established RMG players may or may not be looking for a new experience, right? The trick is finding that crossover of people who have an interest in gambling, which is actually a surprisingly large amount of younger people, but currently aren't really into sports betting, aren't really in traditional casino, and want a different type of experience. In the world of being able to pay for everything with a thumbprint on your phone, people don't necessarily want extra legwork. So making your sign-up process as easy as possible is key to getting people in the door, getting through that real money conversion, and making a deposit. Tutorials are really hard. Everybody knows how difficult tutorials are in freemium games, but when you add just teaching a game on top of that and you add real money and how the gambling works and what's specific to that game, it's a whole other layer that you have to teach people and get them to understand quickly. The market is obviously huge if you can tap into it, right? In the UK, it's 4 times that of mobile freemium. So if you can figure out a way into it, there is a lot of money that changes hands. Being early to market, as I've mentioned, I think is huge. The market growth has been massive. The UK Gambling Commission reported that from April 2014 to March 2015, it nearly doubled from 1.1 billion to 2.4 billion pounds. Users participating and playing real money games online increased about roughly 10% year over year versus land-based, which is quite a bit more stagnant. So the market online on mobile is growing much faster than land-based. So at the end of the day, thanks and apologies to Miss Perry, it was definitely been a different experience than we expected, but I think one that we've definitely learned a lot from. So what are the next steps? We are doubling down. We are doing fewer but bigger, bolder launches, putting more focus on those games to make those few games successful instead of just doing a wider array of launches. We're looking at new methods of UA, new ways of reaching people, and trying to find obviously always more inexpensive ways to get users into the game. I think there's a huge market potential with a lot of untapped customers based on the focus groups, the studies, the research we've done, and also the games we've launched. There's a lot of people out there who want a different gambling experience, and the trick is, of course, reaching them. Overall, we feel like licenses and known partner games are a really good way to go. Getting content out there, of course, like any market that people know the brand or familiar with, or in our case, signing great games that have already launched and freemium have had success, gamblifying those and then relaunching them is I think, a strong path to success if you're going to play in this market. So what are some of the next games that we're launching? Match Revolution is a game where you match adorable creatures, and every time that you match, it runs a wager. Smoothie Blast is a match 3 game, of course, most popular genre on the App Store. And as you match fruit, your Monkey Buddy blends stuff, it runs wagers, and you're gambling. But of course, as a player, you're more focused on the gameplay as opposed to, am I winning or am I losing cash? Like a slot machine where you just sit there and sort of hit one button over and over and over again. We're launching a Playboy arcade-style game. We haven't announced what kind of game it is yet, but it's very fun, and I'm excited to be able to talk about that in a few months. Catapult King is one of the projects I'm most excited about. I've known the developers over at Wicked Witch for many years. Catapult King had about 35 million downloads on iOS and Android across multiple platforms, and it was a overall great casual game, and we've been working with that team to gamblify it, and that's going to launch online in a couple of months, and then it's going to go into land-based casinos towards the end of the year. So now we feel kind of like the Avengers. We're armed, we're ready, we've learned our lessons, and we're ready to make some bigger launches. So what's the next big thing? This is a question I get asked all the time. We think that overall the land-based casino market is huge and full of untapped potential. Currently, land-based casinos are about $159 billion a year business. Mobile games globally are about 22 billion, right? So completely dwarfs it. US casino market alone is $65 billion. Nevada gets about 42 million visitors to casinos per year. Currently, slots players are aging out. They're not getting replaced. That picture on the lower right there is a great example of the average slots player. If you've been to a casino, you've seen it. They enjoy sitting there and having a drink or a smoke and hitting one button. However, you rarely see anyone in their 20s or 30s sitting on a slot machine and hitting one button over and over and over again. Slot machine revenue is down 12.5% over the last several years. Their revenues are steadily dropping, and they're not getting replaced. The first slot machine was invented in 1887. What has changed since? Really, it's pretty displays. A lot of the slots makers, their answer to trying to get younger people is spending a lot of money on putting Game of Thrones onto a machine, right? Walking Dead. They're beautiful, but for me, who grew up in arcades and playing games, I walk up and I'm like, it's still a boring machine. So how is Vegas solving this age crisis, right? They've started marketing pool parties. They've started marketing big nightclubs. I'm not sure what that picture is. I guess it's Cirque du Soleil, but it looks fun and crazy. And that's sort of how they've been able to retain younger people and get under 40s to continue to come to Vegas. So of 21 to 35-year-olds in the USA, about 35% visit casinos. Currently, that wagering rate of that group is only 2%, right? So they have an interest in gambling, but they aren't wagering, they aren't playing slot machines, they aren't even playing poker typically. Currently, barcades are growing really fast. Classic arcade games and 21 to 45-year-olds, there's barcades popping up in pretty much every major city. I think there's been 3 or 4 that have opened in Los Angeles in the last year, very popular. And chains like Dave & Buster's that have games and booze and provide more of a social, interactive environment, those are growing at a rate of 4 to 6 locations per year per chain. You don't have to worry about user acquisition in a market where everybody is already there. That's awesome. When you know that you have a machine on the floor and there's already tons of people, 42 million a year, right, coming through Las Vegas, you have your customers already on site. Operators are very eager for new games. They're looking for new ways of reaching younger people, and right now they are not getting solutions from slots makers. So in a perfect world, what would I like to see? I would love to combine arcades that I spent most of my youth in with casinos. So walk into a casino floor and play Street Fighter, Medieval Madness Pinball, Mario Kart, make them all gamblified, have wagering implemented, and then money. With apologies to Lakitu. All right, Q&A, and I will attempt to not look as confused as Mrs. Spears for whatever questions you may have.
Oh, I'll start us off. Very interesting. So when you think about the wagering aspect, is it set up in a way it's entirely skill-based, or is there like an RTP mentality behind it that's set to ensure that the house is able over the long haul to make money?
Yeah, it's a good question. So all of the games that we have launched are what we call hybrid skill and chance. So what that means is on the back end, it's slot machine math that's determining your wager. And then different actions that you take in the game, just like any normal video game, result in a skill currency reward we've called G-bits. So basically, if you're doing really well, it doesn't necessarily affect your cash outcome, but it will give you reward currency that you can then use to play a cash sweepstakes game online. In a land-based casino, we're doing both hybrid type games like that, as well as purely skill games. So right now it looks like we're going to be one of the first companies with skill gaming on the floor in Las Vegas. That was a bill that was passed just last year, actually, to allow true skill games. So what that means is an average skill game is probably going to allow an RTP, return to player, between 75% and 99%, right? So if you're bad, you're probably not going to make much money back. But if you're really good, you can get that RTP to the point where you're making a consistent amount of money back. So Catapult King, for example, that I threw up there, so that is going to be a skill-based game, both online in the UK, as well as on the floors in Las Vegas.
What about your spenders? What's the demographic of a spender in one of your titles?
The awesome thing is it varies so much based on the game type, right? With those 7 different games, we had everything from an older crowd, people in their 60s, to younger people in their 20s, and we saw it really vary on the game type, just pretty much the same as the casual mobile market, right? The Lucky Words, the words-based game, was really popular with females, like 45 to 60. Dreadnought, which is a kind of a board-style strategy game, that was really popular with males in their 40s to 50s. And then a game like Bears Behaving Badly, that was popular with more users in their 20s and 30s. So it really ranges heavily based on the type of game and, of course, how you're marketing it.
Short question. Have you seen young whales, 20-something, 30-something?
So it depends on how you determine a whale. If you're comparing it to freemium, then yes, we've seen young whales. However, if you're looking at the sort of the gambling, the real money market numbers, and you're comparing that to an average, people in their 20s who spend on the higher end are fairly rare by real money standards. But again, the real money standard is 10 to 100x that of the freemium market. So it's pretty different.
Hello. Actually, I heard about a guys called I remember Bettable.com. Do you know them?
Mm-hmm.
Because they provide you, at least in theory, with a platform and solves the problems with licensing, user checks, etc., etc. Why don't you work with them? At least, to my understanding, they should provide you with a good start and solve a lot of problems behind of you. Is it just economy, or they don't work for your type of games, or what?
I'd say that we're very different in that we're more focused as a real money publisher. So we're probably launching maybe 4 or so partner games this year. So we're selling ourselves and working less as a platform, just because in our experience and with the games that we've launched, we found that to make a really good experience, and with the cost of launching, the cost of user acquisition, right, just like freemium, it makes more sense to us to focus on just a handful of kind of high quality select launches, as opposed to being like, hey, here's an SDK, go do what you want with it. We'll provide your real money coverage and protect you from getting licensed and all that. The cost of launching a game is just too high, and then the cost of our employees, and we're a relatively small company, around 80-some people based in Los Angeles. It's too difficult to go out and just launch stuff on your own. So yeah, I'd say we're more focused on a few select launches, and of course we have the land-based aspect of our business, which I think is probably the thing I'm personally most excited about, because land-based is so much untapped potential.
So what's your connection with Kevin Bacon?
It's a perfect question, actually, to end it. So my connection with Kevin Bacon, we've hung out, and he's amazing. I was so excited when I took this photo, because then I could tell everybody I'm now 0 degrees from Kevin Bacon. All right, thank you guys very much.